politics, business, sports, arts, music. Mike and Marty on the beat. Mike and Marty. Mike and Marty on
Good morning, Bellows Falls and Keene, and welcome to the feed. It's Mike and Marty. Today we're here with Gail Golec. We're going to be talking about her podcast and about Bellows Falls and things that have happened in the past. But first, Marty, with local events.
Local events. So this week, coming up at the Bellows Falls Opera House, starting on July 28th and running through August 1st, is The Sound of Freedom. It's actually based on a true story. It's about the rescue of some children from traffickers. So that's a nice, something different than a DC comic, Marvel's Avengers movie, which they're great. I'm not saying they pay the bills, right? But it's nice to have something a little different. The classic movie tonight is the last in the anime series. It's Kiki's Delivery Service, and it's sponsored by Village Square Booksellers. So kudos to all the people that sponsored those films, and kudos to the Opera House for having it. I heard it was a lot of them have been a great turnout, success. Something different, so awesome. So we have a lot of things happening at the library. They have, I still am always amazed at all the things that Sam comes and tells us that she's doing, and she sent me some updates so I could keep people knowing what's happening. This Wednesday at 5 p.m., they're having a program called The Wonderful World of Bats. I will not be attending, but you are all welcome to if you want to learn more about bats. So apparently there's a Wednesday theme here. Next Wednesday, she's having an author visit. It's Doug Wilhelm. It's not only a visit, but it's a book giveaway. So folks that come to listen to Doug talk about his books get to take away at least 2 free books. So
wow, nice.
That's a nice thing. She wants us to remind everyone that on Fridays during the summer, there's a summer play group. It happens from 10:30 until noon, and that's at the Central School Playground. So it's a good place for kids to go meet, interact with other kids, and moms can interact with other moms, and it's a supervised play group. And then one of my favorite events of the year is the Bring It Home 5K.
Yay!
Yay! No, it's a good event. I'm sorry, I'm being facetious. It's always it's hot that morning, and it's like
it's threatening to rain. That's the other thing.
That's the other thing too. So, not that the weather's going to be changing at all, because that's what we've been dealing with. But Saturday, August 5th at 8 a.m., there is the Bring It Home 5K. You can register ahead of time online and then just pay that morning. It's $15 if you for a single person, but if you can gather a group of 10, you each only pay $10 each.
Great.
So I kept local events minor because we have so much to talk about.
Yes, we do.
You want me to start?
Yes, please.
So I listened to all but the last episode because I just ran out of time. And Gail promises not to spoiler alert the last episode because I am on the edge of my seat. But I do want to first of all say kudos to you. And the second thing I want to say is anybody that doesn't want to listen to it because they don't want to hear about Andrew's Inn, for whatever reason, listen to it anyway. More than likely you need to hear it. And second of all, the history that you bring in about Bellows Falls is just fascinating. Like a lot of stuff I kind of knew but didn't know, and you bring it to life.
Thank you.
So listen to it, folks. It's
for people who don't know what it is. Can you give us the title and the?
Oh, I could. Yes, I could. It is the secret. Sorry, it's The Secret Life of Death. Identity. Episode 8. Identity. So I wrote it down, and there's 6 parts.
Wow.
And they go like that. Like I was driving in the car yesterday listening to it.
Podcasts are great for, like you said, I love to listen to podcasts while I'm driving.
As long as I can stay like this.
Yeah.
Shiny objects. But like what?
Yeah.
So what made you want to do this series of episodes?
This one was really, all of the podcasts that I do are a labor of love. There's always some element, some story that I want to learn more about, and most of them have to do with history that's 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago. This one is actually 40 years ago, or 50 years ago. I guess we just had the 50th anniversary of when the inn opened. And as we were saying when we were chatting before, I was a kid, but it was within my lifetime. Mm-hmm. And it is very rare that you get to have something truly historical happen in your town in your lifetime. And the weird thing about it was that I didn't know anything about it. So that was really the thing that kicked it off for me, is how can this thing have happened? And not only I not know anything about it, but most people know nothing about Andrews Inn or what actually happened there. We all know the stories, a few of them that have persisted, but I really wanted to understand much more completely what the era was like, what was happening in Bellows Falls. How did a gay bar get to come to be in this blue-collar mill town in the 70s and 80s? I mean, you cannot make that up.
Yeah. I know. Well, and a significant gay bar.
Yeah.
I mean, not just in Bellows Falls, but in New England.
Exactly. It was very
a destination.
well known. It was a destination.
Yeah.
It was very well known in the Northeast, and people came from New York. They came from Montreal. They came from Maine, and all parts of the Northeast. It was because there just weren't places where LGBTQ plus people had the opportunity to get together and just socialize. That just did not exist at that time period.
I like it I don't remember what episode, I do know where I was driving when I was listening to it. I was just about Windsor. But where you talk about, it became, this is when you're talking about the, there's a magazine article that you reference, and the gist of the article was that this is a place that people could move to and really have a life, as opposed to like kind of the like P-Town or Fire Island and that
Right.
culture, but to actually have a nice existence, a nice
Yes, you could
country existence, I guess.
You could have quiet. You could get a job and feel comfortable in your home, in the neighborhood that you lived in, and maybe have friends come visit or family members come visit. And again, that is a time period where that was not feasible for most LGBTQ plus people. Just the most basic things like that. And
Which I'm going to use your term, which was like growing up in that era and not really thinking about it, which was not understanding the whole culture. That was like a gobsmack. Everybody doesn't have that ability to live live their
that's
life.
True.
So
if you've grown up in it, you don't understand that it is different. And it is unique.
Because you just didn't. I don't know. Just didn't think that way. Like, someone can just move here and it's okay. Like, they have to worry about it. Like, yeah.
And I think that's a good point. That one of the things I wanted to do with that podcast too is bring the history forward and the details, obviously, of what had happened, but also to create or recreate Bellows Falls at that time. In Bellows Falls, kind of as a microcosm for the United States and in most, like a typical neighborhood of that era. And a lot of people who didn't have, if you didn't know somebody who was LGBTQ plus, maybe you never even heard the word gay or queer or anything, you didn't have a reference for that. And so giving us, looking back on that, giving people some space to understand that was also evolving, that these ideas and people being exposed to just different people in general. We're this little quiet town that a whole lot didn't happen here, and then to have something very different come in and that a lot of people just didn't have that kind of exposure to.
That's true.
So of course there were going to be growing pains associated with that, like would be anywhere, and some acceptance in some circles, not so much acceptance in other circles. And what I found so fascinating was how the town and the people in the town were trying to work that out in real time. And again, not to no spoilers or how we all know how it ends, but ultimately it had a lot of issues associated with it, not a lot of positive associations in the end, but there are reasons for that, and I think people really need to understand what was behind that.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Again, I would have been probably, I know I'm dating myself, I would have probably been like, it would have been like probably early high school at that point, I
Yeah.
think, especially when the what we're referring to, the very unjust thing that happened. And I'm not, you're going to have to listen to the podcast
to find out.
to find out. I had no idea, like, who was involved, and then knowing the person in the future, because we had being like, oh, okay, that's why he's got a bad reputation, and I do 100% agree with if anybody, the perfect person to get the whole thing going, and the reason that it worked in the beginning was John Moises. Because he my first was actually listening to it. It was kind of a walk down memory lane, hearing the history of Bells Falls and me thinking about Bells Falls as a kid and the businesses and everything. And he was a hairdresser, and he had John's House of Beauty on School Street.
Yep.
And you talk about how they when they took over the inn, they made it very Victorian, and it threw me back to I think it was flocked wallpaper.
Yes.
Flocked wallpaper in John's House of Beauty when you walked in. But just the idea as a kid growing up in Bells Falls to go to a salon to get your hair cut, like
Right.
for the first time, and sporting a lovely shag haircut coming out. But people knew him, the family. He made no concessions or excuses for who he was, and that he paved that way.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the next iteration, it wasn't paved as it wasn't as nicely paved.
Yeah.
I'll say it that way. When Tom and Jeremy came in, and
Right.
that's sad to me.
Well, I think, and I might beg to differ with you there, since I spent time with at least with Jeremy, and I thought that at least initially they had a very good thing going, and there was a lot of internal struggle within that community that created.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it wasn't. I think the bad connotations that came out weren't because of Jeremy. He was very, very nice and very open and very business friendly, but there were other factions within that community that wanted it to be different, and he didn't necessarily want it to be that way.
Yeah.
And so I think I haven't listened to this part yet, but I'm hoping that might come out, is because I had just background. Marty and I interviewed Jeremy for the Star Hotel fire because he was a person that had taken pictures and everything, and so we ended up spending a lot of time talking to him and talking to him about Andrew's Inn before in the beginning and what happened and how things happened, and it was an amazing story.
Yeah.
And you're telling it, so this could be really good.
Well, and that's a good, just to give people a little lay of the land. So when the inn initially opened, it was the Moises family, John Moises, his father Andrew, their mother Fanny, and his siblings. And when they first opened it in the Hotel Wyndham building, it was just, I say like a regular sit-down restaurant, but the idea was to make it kind of a nice place. It's Bellows Falls, you had your bars and you had your sandwich shops and things like that, but it wasn't a place people went to at that time for an evening out. You go and go to the bars for your drinks, and that was kind of a separate thing. But they wanted to make the downtown more of a destination. And so they opened that in 73 and really had kind of, for the time, a nice restaurant, sit-down place. And people in town weren't really into that. It kind of seemed expensive, and, to do something fancy seemed kind of a little silly. This is Bellows Falls,
Thinking back to that, I was trying
Yeah.
to remember back. I was trying to think, like, I remember going to the coffee shop.
Yeah.
But I don't even think I knew there was a restaurant.
Yeah.
Because it just wasn't the culture
Right,
that I grew up with.
exactly.
So
Right.
I understand they had some struggles
They
with
did.
making that go.
Yeah, and so they were losing money, and they needed people who wanted and who were interested in that kind of an experience. And of course, John, being very openly gay, he knew very well his community would love to have a situation like that. So he started very slowly advertising it as a gay.
We actually
bar
have,
and
I think
hotel.
we have an image. I forgot we had images. We
good.
got totally involved. We have the image, I believe, of one of the ads. There's the plaque for Andrew's Inn. And then I think we have the image of one of the ads. There we go.
Yeah. So he started to take out ads in gay publications in the Northeast, advertising, and would also do handwritten cards to people who he knew were gay, and say, we're
I
having
love
a thing.
Yeah, come on.
that part.
Come on down.
And was he not able to mail them locally? Was that?
Well, he could have, but of course, because everybody in town's
Yeah.
watching what you do, so he would take them. He would take those cards over to the Walpole.
That's so
So-
funny.
post
I love that
office.
part.
Yeah.
I love that part.
It is. It really is. Oh my God.
I was like, of course you did. I would too.
So and so's. Yeah, of course it is. It is so Bellows Falls. So they started out slow that way, and it really got a nice reputation. And because they were doing a nice, people could stay the weekend because it was a hotel as well, and you got your drinks, you got your food, you got a place to sleep. You can, get a date for the night, and it was kind of it had it
nice.
all there in one building, and it was safe. It was contained, so they didn't have to worry about their safety going out into local bars and things like that would not have
And leaving local bars, I guess, is probably where more you had to worry about
and
your
there's
safety.
and there still were interactions
Yeah.
with locals that were fights and name calling, that kind of thing certainly happened. And they had big balls and oh my God. Oh, sorry.
A dance. They had large dances.
They had large dances.
Alex, can you
I
edit
like
that?
that one.
Yeah.
That was perfect.
They would have loved that. And
They
it-
would have. That was perfect humor.
Okay. We digress.
Large dances. Anyway, and people would come for those, and they'd get dressed up. They were big affairs, and so they were so successful with that they kind of were looking to get out because they owned the whole building, and all say businesses to manage. It was a lot, and the family, the Moises family, wanted to sell, and they did that in '79. And Jeremy Yost and Tom Herman bought it in '79 and moved. They were a same-sex couple. And so that was sort of the first, I would say there was acceptance on the local level because people knew the Moises family. They knew John. There was a certain cachet that brought them. But then, again, another very Bellows Falls thing, outsiders, people coming in.
Yeah.
We don't know who these people are. And because Tom and Jeremy were from New Hampshire, they weren't from Vermont.
Oh my God.
I know. Yeah, foreigners. They didn't know. You didn't have the. My grandfather worked at the mill sort of backstory that we tend to highlight around here, and that became a bone of contention. And there was a protest, a rally, and a march where people were when they bought it. And
Have no recollection of that. I don't, and that's the interesting thing.
It came up as I was talking with Jeremy. It turned out later that none of the protesters were local either. They were bussed in from somewhere else.
Right.
And it was the people not from Bellows Falls protesting against the people not from Bellows Falls.
Yeah, and how perfect is that?
Pretty.
But
Anyway,
it says a lot about that kind of issue that people outside had more of a problem with
than
it,
people inside.
to a certain extent. Not to say that there were certainly local people who were very anti.
There were, but I think it turned, like you sort of said, it was a very fluid situation.
Yeah.
They turned quickly. They were able to talk with the,
Right.
they were friendly. They bought locally. They bought their things,
Right.
and so it was like,
Yeah.
eventually things turned around.
Yeah, they could kind of get an idea that these are just meet us, come in, and that's what Tom and Jeremy were all about. Come in, get to know us, come see. It's not this big scary thing. We're regular guys. We're nice. We're two nice boys.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
I love
they're
that
two nice
term.
boys,
I
and
love
they
that
really
term.
were. Like when you get the sweetest, kindest, most gentle souls,
And they were counselors.
and they're counselors, so they certainly, they had that background that they weren't coming into rabble-rouse and to start anything, but they just really wanted. This was an excellent opportunity for them to actually feel like were doing something and integrating into a local community, and again, that kind of stuff just never happened at that time period. This was really groundbreaking stuff happening here.
Who would have thought? Huh?
Who would have thought?
Who would have
Right,
thought?
right. Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting when I found out they were counselors, and people are like, well, why are you counselors running a a club, right? But talk about meeting people where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
If people need help, meeting them, they were in a safe space. I'm guessing that at that time, because people couldn't be, and probably it's still true, when you can't be who you are, you might self-medicate a lot.
Right.
You might have self-destructive behaviors. And so what a way to reach your audience, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, I think even by their estimations, that sometimes wasn't always the right situation when somebody was maybe had a little too much to drink to try to do counseling.
But
that did afford them just even that concept.
A connection.
A connection. If you're safe here. Come here. Come back. Come back. We'll work on this kind of thing.
Nice.
Just to have those sort of connections. Yeah.
How long did it take you? Because of the detail and how long did it take you to do this?
The research and
Wow.
everything.
I've been trying to put a number on it. It was years. I worked on it over years in fits and starts. It wasn't always all at once kind of thing. And gosh, I have no.
Just curious, because
Hundreds of hours, I would say, just between the research and the talking to people, editing, all of that stuff, writing, recording, all of that is, probably hundreds of hours. And over 6 episodes. And it grew over time. The more I talked to different people, they'd say, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. And I said,
they're done that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, yeah. And eventually, we were saying in the intro, there's so many other little tangential stories that would have been great and were, but I did have to limit it to at a certain point, because I was just never going to finish it if I didn't.
Right.
You can go forever and ever, but there's no limit to the impact a story like this has. It has so many tendrils and fingers going out into the community like it did.
And you did, so the final episode 6, you premiered live, right? And I think we have a picture of that. That was at Stage 33.
Yeah, it was a wonderful
How
event.
did that feel?
It was really exciting. Mark Pipcorn at Stage 33 has always been really good to me. Whenever I said, hey, I've got this weird idea for something, he's like, yep, let's do it. So they had an opening, a couple of openings over the summer, because they usually take a break with their stuff. And they have a tremendous group of volunteers that were all excited about it and showed up. It takes hours for them to set up all their equipment, because they do audio and video, and setting up chairs and setting up the place there too with some food and things. They all showed up, and nice. I hardly had to do anything, which was amazing. But it was nice, and we scheduled it for June, which is Pride Month, and so we also were tying that into some other events that were happening in town at that time, and it just felt nice to do something positive. We've heard so much bad press and bad news about LGBTQ stuff the past couple years. I think a lot of people in the area just wanted to do something that felt good and was positive and come together, because of course after COVID we haven't been together, so just to be able to do something together in a room that felt nice was really great. And it came together seamlessly, but by no fault or by no action on my part. It was all the other people who.
So we are down to under 2 minutes.
Okay.
What would be your hope for the effect of this podcast?
Like you said in the beginning, even if you don't want to hear about Andrews Inn, you're not interested in LGBTQ plus history, you might be interested in Bellows Falls history. And of course, you can't really take one without the other in this story, so you're going to get it. If you're going to listen to this, you'll hear about that history. But Bellows Falls is also a character in this as well, and so understanding that the place is always a character, and understanding that really illuminates the events that take place in that space. And if you're a local resident, you're part of that. And maybe you weren't alive back then, but you're living the repercussions from or the reverberations from those things in the past. So there may be things you're like, why is that? Why is this? Why is that? This is why. You just understand your place in this world a little bit better.
My hope, actually, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
My hope is that in people understanding the history, it helps us with the future.
Yeah.
For both acceptance and also to perhaps finish the kind of, I think the vision that Andrew's Inn had for the hotel,
Yeah. Yep.
and maybe somebody could finish that vision for the hotel and we could have a vibrant downtown hotel again. Oops, oh, there's timing.
There we go. There's timing.
But that's,
But
I
it's
mean,
an interesting-
that's what it
that's
it really brought to mind for me, is that if you really understood, because they, I think,
I mean, it's the same. It's from
Yeah.
when the Andrews Inn opened to Ciao Popolo, we're still on the same
We
sort
need
of
to-
arc,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we don't quite.
we need to, like having
Last
that.
little bit.
You talk about the economic driver of the hotel, and that is kind of the downtown piece that we're missing. So
Right.
I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah.
To the-
Okay,
to
but
the
we have to
ethos.
leave. I will hope you come back and
Yes.
we'll
Yes,
talk
anytime.
about another project or a
Anytime.
different next project. And thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Goodbye, Bellows Falls. We'll see you next week.
Local news, politics, business, sports, arts, music.